Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside Futsal, episode number 7. And we have the best writer in the English language for futsal with us today, the insightful, the dedicated, the passionate Doug Reed, all the way over from England. Doug, my friend, welcome to the show. How are things out in England for you?
Thank you very much. You read out my introduction just as I sent it you, so very happy with that. Brilliant. Really enjoying the Euros. Been a great start to the tournament, so yeah, really excited about that.
I love it. Well, you have so much experience, not just on the writing realm out there. We've had a lot of journalists on the show, but you have 101 caps for the English national futsal team out there. You've played professional in various places, and I got to be honest, you bring such great insight. For everyone watching, make sure at the end of this episode, you go check out DougReedFutsal.com. That's the right URL?
Yeah, that's the right one, yeah.
You got to check it out. If you read English, if you want some insight on what's going on in England and musings from around the world, nobody does it better than Doug in English out there. Trust me, this is going to be a great show. So, we're talking Euros. We were watching matches today. Let's get into this. Let's get into the first match out there of the day. Kazakhstan versus Italy. We knew it was going to be a pretty decent battle. What did you think of the match?
Yeah, it was a good game. I think we saw, Italy obviously gone through the tournament without winning a game, which I don't think is a massive. Well, I think it's a massive surprise that they haven't won. I think that they've gone out isn't a huge surprise. I think the last few years. They've not been the level of before. Obviously, they won it. Was it 2014? Wasn't it? I think. I just think Italy. They've got Merlim, who, of course, maybe one of the best, maybe the best player in the world, arguably. Nicolodi, really good player, but then I think the rest of the players they're not up to the top standard. And I think Kazakhstan deserved the win in the end.
No question. We saw the first goal with, Douglas Jr. with this beautiful laser precision pass over to Orazov, who just had this nice, beautiful sliding tap in. And then just shortly after, they had Valulin. And if I pronounce that wrong, these are such hard names to get from the Balkans and from Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, all these regions. But Valulin is what I'm going with. He had this crisp pass. I want to say it was from Edson that came in to make it 2-0. But then they almost had a 3-0. Result. I wanted to get your take on the slide from the Italian defender that hit the arm. There's no VAR over here at the Euros. Let me ask, that could have given Kazakhstan a stranglehold had it been called a penalty. Now, what are your thoughts on no VAR at the Euros? And did you like the VAR at the World Cup?
I'm not a fan of VAR, to be honest. I think futsal is a lot about emotion. And I think when you have the VAR, it takes away the emotion a bit. I think the way they did it in World Cup wasn't a bad idea with the challenge, which was quite good. But yeah, it's your advantage and disadvantage, isn't it? Because you kind of slow the game down, but the advantage is you hope you get the right decision. But then we look at football and we see that that's not necessarily the case either. So yeah, I prefer no VAR. I don't know what your opinion is.
I do like the coach's challenge a lot, and I was in Lithuania for the tournament, and one of the things that was intriguing, of course, was at the beginning in the group stages, where the goals were built a little bit different. They had this triangle in the corner, and there was 3 goals that were essentially taken away that were goals. It was pretty much undisputed, and ultimately, they put a piece of plastic out there so it would just smash into the net. Little fixes like that were good. But, we don't want to see any controversy. I think, this game was pretty much Kazakhstan's from the start. But, imagine going up 3-0 against Italy in the first half out there. Italy would have completely had to adapt. And ultimately, it's something when you're in a critical game like this and you're down 3-0, or you even foul out, a little early on. It changes the whole dynamic. And that's something that Italy got away with. And they rewarded a little shortly after when Douglas, Nicolodi, who you mentioned earlier, came in and, was a beneficiary from a loose ball, beat Hagita, and brought Italy back in the game. But, from your experience, in the second half, Kazakhstan's up, 2-1, but they have 4 fouls, about 7 minutes in. You're so experienced, like we said, over 100 caps from England. We know that you've been coaching and helping young kids and top elite players across England. What's it like when you foul at number 4 so early on in the half in such a critical game? Break that down for us.
Yeah, frustrating, and especially it depends on the fouls, because I think in futsal, because these 5 fouls, they almost become a resource that you need to use. So if you've given those fouls away because it's been counterattacks or something like that, where you've maybe stopped a really good chance, you can accept it. But it's when someone gave a foul right by the opponent's goal and there's no reason, that's when it gets really frustrating. And, you look at Italy and they've got Merlim there, and, now you've got nearly the whole game to defend, and you can't really put the pressure on him, and he's so dangerous in those situations. So, yeah, it really puts the pressure on, and like you said, after half time, maybe the coach has said, game plan, right, we're going to press really hard this half, put the pressure on the other team, and then, within a few minutes, that game plan's out the window now, because you can't press on 4 fouls and risk giving out the fouls. So, yeah, it really does affect the game, and it's a really interesting tactical element of futsal.
No, certainly, especially against an aggressive team like Kazakhstan. They're very defensively sound. I think so far, we still have the other Group C and D matches tomorrow, but Kazakhstan's the leading scoring team in this tournament right now with 14. And ultimately, we saw Orazov with his second goal, and I mean he's essentially at the top of the scoring lead right now for the Golden Boot. It's amazing to see. You got a defender who's sitting there. I think. He's either tied with Antashkin or I think he has 6, but I think he has 6 goals. And you got this, nice young defender in the prime of his career, pumping in all these goals. And you got all these supporting players, the most famous obviously being Douglas Jr. and how effective he's been. Let me ask you, what has stood out for you when watching Kazakhstan in this tournament so far?
I think you make a great point about Orazov. It's, obviously we all know that Kazakhstan have 4 Brazilian-born players, but I think what's really great about Kazakhstan is the quality of the Kazakhstani players, or Kazakhstani-born players. Yesenamanov, Tersagolov. I think 10 of their 14 goals have come from Kazakhstan-born players, and they're so solid in defence as well. That's what I really like about Kazakhstan. And yeah, I think that's what you can highlight when you look at other teams that have brought Brazilians in. Maybe they just, let's say Georgia, for example, they very much rely on the Brazilian players, and you don't really see much of the Georgian players. And I imagine that must cause a massive split in the squad, because I imagine a lot of these players, Brazilian ones, haven't even, played in the country. So I don't imagine they speak Georgian. And I think what you see with the Kazakhstan team is they're really together. There's no split between the Brazilian and the Kazakhstan players. When they celebrate goals, they all jump on each other, hug. They all seem so happy for each other. So I think, you can question that strategy of bringing Brazilian players in, but it's nice to see that team all together and seeing maybe Kazakhstan players getting an opportunity to shine that they wouldn't have got if they hadn't had those Brazilians beside them.
No question about it. And I think a big part of that, particularly from Kazakhstan, is that half the roster comes from one of the best futsal clubs in the world in Kairat Almaty. And I mean, you just see the unification together of these guys, and they just mesh. I mean, they were penalties away from being in the final against Argentina at the World Cup. This team is no joke. They were one of the dark horses, if not one of the favorites by many to, lift the title out here. I mean, we talk about, great players, and, I want to kind of briefly pivot, as you mentioned Alex Merlim earlier. He's 35 years old, going on 36 this summer. With the next major event being the World Cup in 2024, do we see him at another tournament? This guy is one of the best on the planet. I mean, he's won everything almost there is pretty much in, world futsal, with the exception maybe of the World Cup. What do you want to see from this player in his remaining years? And do we get to see him for one more tournament?
Yeah, I think definitely we do. I mean, Kazakhstan stopped him quite well in his dribbling today, although he still had his occasions when he was dangerous. But I think what you see with Merlim in Italy, he's the guy at the back a lot of the time, moving the ball really well. And I think, you can do that for many years. He doesn't need that acceleration that maybe he'll lose as he gets older. He's so good under pressure and just switching the play from one side to the other. And you can see how much Italy rely on him for that. So I think, yeah, we can definitely see him. Obviously, it was a real shame that Italy didn't qualify for the last World Cup and we didn't see him there. But It'd be great to see him at a future Euros and a future World Cup. I think every futsal fan would like to see that.
No question about it. I mean, he's been devastating, playing, for Sporting and his work out there. And I'm a Benfica guy, so unfortunately, we've been the recipients of quite a few beatings off, what he's been doing. Now, let's pivot over to the next game out there. I mean, this was one of the most important games for both Slovenia and Finland in the history of their countries out there. I mean, Finland goes and wins 2-1. It was a very tight game out there. What does this mean for the Finnish futsal program?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing achievement. And, I think the pivotal figure in that is Micho Martic, the Croatian coach, who's been working with them for, I think, about 9 years now. And I think he's clearly transformed that team. Obviously, this was their debut Euros, debut major championship, and they've gone straight to the quarterfinals, and who knows how much further they'll go. But I think it's great what he's done with that team because, of course, they're not, semi-pro players, most of them, unless they're playing abroad. They don't have the technical quality, maybe, or the very special players that other teams, like we've mentioned in Italy and Kazakhstan. But what they do is, as a team, and they keep that intensity. And it's brilliant how he uses all his players. They all get on the pitch. Even the goalkeeper, he changed. The goalkeeper who'd played the first 2 games, who'd done really well, he even changed for this pivotal game. And that gives massive confidence to players. You see it so many times in squads, and I think we'll get onto it later. Some of the teams from the Balkan regions, they rely on very few players. And that makes the other players, they lose confidence. So when they do come on, if they get a couple of minutes, they're worried about making a mistake because they know that's going to be the end of their, game time for that game. So I think his confidence he gives, and I've worked with Micho in 3 teams. He worked with the England national team, and 2 Croatian teams I played with him. And he really gives players confidence. And I think what he did when he went to Finland is he realized that he can't develop the players on his own. He needs the clubs to develop them. So he's done a lot on the coach education. Obviously, what he's taught those national team players, they've took back to their individual teams. And this has made the whole of Finnish futsal grow. And then I think we all know, who know Micho, is his passion for the game. And I think that has transmitted to the whole of the Finnish futsal community. And like I said, it's not Micho on his own. A lot of people made a contribution to this success, but I think he was the inspiration for everyone to really build Finnish futsal, and it's amazing what they've achieved so far.
Yeah, it's rather remarkable out there. I was in Helsinki just before the World Cup and was able to just kind of get a little bit of a taste of, what was happening over there. The Finnish players, very accessible. Big shout out to Dusan Matic as well out there. You mentioned the goalkeepers, and, he's been a big part of that program too. Now, Finland finishing second in that group is now going to go up against one of the tournament favorites, an undefeated Portugal. We'll talk about the Portugal game against Ukraine momentarily, but I think it's safe to say that there are no expectations whatsoever for the Finnish. No pressure on them at all to deliver, but can they actually deliver an upset here?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, Portugal are going to be the favourites, but I think everyone's talking about Finland, massive surprise. And yeah, I didn't expect them to get to the quarterfinals. Obviously, you'd expect Italy to go there. But it's not surprised me how they played. I saw them play against Italy last year in a friendly. They lost 2-0. But let's go back and we look at the World Cup qualifiers. They drew with Italy and they drew with Portugal in Portugal. So this is a team that's already got a draw against Portugal. So I think they've got a chance, and they've got nothing, like you said, they've got no pressure on them now. So they're going to go there with everything. And again, they've used their whole squad, so I wouldn't expect tiredness to be a factor for them. I expect them to be fresh. And yeah, if they've drawn with Portugal in Portugal, then I think they can do something in the quarterfinal. And an interesting story there about which was really influenced Finland's success in futsal is actually that game in Portugal, because the president of the Finnish FA, it wasn't that, this is a story someone told me, that he wasn't that interested in futsal. But when that game was going on, he had a meeting with UEFA or something in the region. And so he traveled to the game, and, he came in his suit, wasn't that interested really, just thought it was a crazy game, because again, actually, Finland went 2-0 up, and it was only a double penalty and a fly goalkeeper in the last couple of minutes that saved Portugal in that game. And after the game, players are on the pitch. You know, this president comes down, his tie's off, he's drenched in sweat. He's like going to all of them, I can't believe this game, it's unbelievable. And I think that's, you know, then he supported futsal more, which it also gives that example of, you know, we need these people who are at the top administration positions in football federations to see the game, and I'm sure they're falling in love with it. I've digressed a bit from the question, but yeah,
no, not at all. I love it.
Finland have definitely got a chance. Again, I think Portugal are favourites, but if Finland can keep it tight for maybe the first 5 minutes, build a little bit of confidence, goalkeeper has a good game, they have a bit of luck. Like we talked about Kazakhstan, a top 4 team definitely in Europe, finished 3rd and 4th at the last 2 Euros. And I thought Finland I know they lost, was it 6-2, I think? But I thought for the majority of the game, Finland were actually the better team and had some great chances. So, yeah, I'm hoping Finland, it would be really nice for them to get through, although, you know, obviously we want to see the best teams get to the final. But, yeah, I'm hoping Finland can pull another surprise in that game.
Well, I mean, as a Portugal supporter, I don't really want to see them go the distance on it, but I know, you know, our Finnish friends have done a great job. And I mean, you know, if it happens to end at the quarterfinals, I mean, it's a monumental victory for them. But if they get to the semifinals, that's going to be some serious business. And I think a lot of people were noticing on, I guess, the social media pages, pretty much the new marketing plan and the new development plans from the Finnish FA. So they're putting their money where their mouths are. And that's exactly what we want to see. And being from Canada, we know that, you know, Finland is a massive hockey country and hockey is number 1, 2, and 3 there. But who's to say the next arena sport to take over can't be futsal? So good job to all our friends over in Finland. Let me ask you, another team in that group that gave me a little bit of a surprise, particularly after their first game against Kazakhstan, was Slovenia. What were your thoughts in watching the Slovenians play throughout the tournament?
Yeah, I thought, you know, they've always got that technical quality. Individual technical quality that, like I said before about the Balkan region, it produces so many players. You know, in this tournament, we've got Croatia, we've got Slovenia, we've got Serbia, we've got Bosnia as well. So yeah, I think they've done really well. I think again they rely on they stick to a few players, and I think that costs them a little bit. But I think they've shown some new players this time. That Turk looked really good. Obviously scored a great goal. He's only 25 years old, so he's got a lot of potential. The goalkeeper, I thought, Berzalek, was it? He's only 23. I thought he looked really good. So I think it's nice to see this new generation of players. I mean, Ostrikar, 35 now, so maybe he's got another tournament in him. But yeah, it's good to see some new players coming through. But yeah, I've been impressed as always with the Slovenian team. They always fight as hard as they can. And yeah, they've had a reasonable performance in this tournament, I think.
Well, not bad at all. I mean, sitting there pulling off 2 points and finishing ahead of Italy. Where does the Italian team go from here? I mean, they were European champions within the last decade, didn't even make the last World Cup, and here they are finishing dead last in a group with Finland, Slovenia, and Kazakhstan. What does the Italian Federation need to do in order to make this a more world-class program again?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you know, Italy, I think it was the 2008 World Cup where they went all Brazilian-born players. And then with Menecheli, they tried to put more Italians. And then they've gone back to more Brazilians again. And they've not done any better than with the Italians. And Ferretti, the ex-Brazilian coach, was talking about this, about how you don't develop the futsal in the country if you bring in the foreign-born players, the Brazilian-born players. And you know, you look at Italy and it's got one of the better leagues. You know, futsal well followed, it seems, in the country. Yet they're not producing at the major tournaments. And I think we go back to the Finland example now. Probably got less quality than Italy, if we're talking about Italian-born players. But Micho's given that confidence. He's trusted the players. And I think from Italy's point of view, you have to trust the Italian players and give them a chance to grow, in my opinion. And I think that would be better for the futsal in the whole country.
Yeah, and something that was said earlier on Twitter from a very respected journalist and aficionado, Valerio Scalabrelli. He actually didn't count the Italian league as a top world league. Would you happen to agree with that now?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's right because he put Portugal, Brazil, Spain, and Russia in the ahead, and I'd agree with him. Those four are ahead of the Italian league, and it's a shame because all that money that's gone into the Italian game, but why is the league not one of the top leagues? And I think it seems to me from the outside, and Valerio will have and other people in Italy will have a much more educated opinion than me, but it seems to me that they don't invest in the long term. It's all short term, get players, rather than build the game, build the clubs. We've seen so many clubs from Italy win championships and then disappear because of financial problems. So, yeah, I think Italy has got a lot to improve in the way they develop the sport.
Yeah, and I mean that group was something else. Hopefully, Italy, can sit there and turn it around because they were obviously one of the biggest world beaters, year in year out. But now, for the last 4 years, it hasn't been good. I think this is their second consecutive Euro in which they've been knocked out at the group stage. So, some questions to be asked over there at the FIGC. Now, moving over to Group A action, this was a really, really good finish. To the very end out there. We'll start off with the Ukraine versus Portugal. I mean, the Ukraine losing 3-2 in the opening match against host Netherlands. And, you had to watch that game and think, wow, the Ukraine just ain't what they used to be. And then you watch what they did to Serbia the other day, the 6-1 demolishing, and their performance today against Portugal. And anybody looking at the Ukraine in the past tense definitely got a rude awakening today. What was your take on Ukraine versus Portugal?
Yeah, Ukraine is not a team you want to play against. No one enjoys playing against Ukraine. I think it was in the first game. No, was it Serbia? I think it was Serbia when they scored from the set play and the own goal. I think it was Vasic who scored. And I've been in that position where you're marking the player at the back post and Ukraine are just firing balls at you. And it's not a nice position to be. You're hoping you don't deflect it towards your goal and you deflect it away. Because for me, they have a very simple game. And it's clever because they know what their qualities are. And it's very direct. I mean, the goalkeeper, a lot of long throws from set plays. It's always a shot to the back post or a shot on goal. And defensively, they're very strong. So I don't think anyone really enjoys playing against them. And it was great before. I think they really destroyed Serbia. They got that early goal, sat back, and then just every time counterpunched Serbia and just really demoralized them. And today's game, again, they kept it really tight. Had some great chances, with the better chances in the first half, to be honest. So they could have come out of that game winning. They were pretty unfortunate to lose, but to concede only one goal to the European and world champions is not a bad effort. So yeah, I think they've got chance. Who is it they're playing in the? It's Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan in the next round. That's going to be a cracker of a match.
Yeah, I think that would be a really interesting game. Whether we'll see Higuita coming out a lot more. We didn't see him too much in today's game. So yeah, I think Ukraine were very good today and stuck to their game plan as they always do.
Yeah, you were absolutely spot on. I thought they were the better team in the first half. And honestly, if it wasn't for goalkeeper Andre Souza making those 3 or 4 clutch saves, and those were absolute rockets that were just being launched at him, and he had all the confidence in the world to parry them away. And if it wasn't for him, I had him as man of the match today. I know Zicky got the goal, but I thought Andre Souza net was absolutely the man for Portugal and the big reason why they clinched first place out there. Now, I do want to get your take on Zicky Te. I mean, he is the new hot ticket in futsal, I think, along with Leozinho. And his acceleration is coming up really quick. I mean, he's such a young kid still. I don't even know if he's old enough to buy a pint in the United States, to be perfectly honest. That's how young he is. What's been your take and your view on one of the best new emerging pivots in the world?
Yeah, it's very impressive. You can see when he's on the pitch, Portugal play a lot better. And I think, widening it out, I think these strong pivots, I really enjoy watching them. And I think every team needs them. I was really surprised that Spain didn't bring Solano. I know now they've added him because of an injury. But, their big, strong pivot, he wasn't selected in the original squad. So I've been really impressed with Zicky. Always causes a trouble, creates space for other players. I really like him when he's on with Pani Varela, because he creates a space for him. The other players are so worried about closing their lines to Zicky. He creates space for them. So yeah, I think he's outstanding. And like you said, when you think he's only 20 years old, like this guy's potential to grow, he's already a great player, but his potential to grow is incredible. And it's quite nice for Portugal with Ricardinho retiring, but maybe they have another star coming through.
Certainly. I mean, he took over for Cardinal leading into the World Cup, and, everyone thought, obviously, Cardinal, one of the best Portuguese players of all time, being injured, but Zicky came in was absolutely nothing. And, it doesn't seem like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders. There doesn't have any pressure. When he plays, he looks like he has fun. I don't want to say street football because we hate correlating that together with futsal, but he just looks like he's in the streets with his mates having a blast and working hard, and he's just super athletic. Love his smile, very down to earth, very bright future for him. Now, we got to be honest, it was not the most inspiring performance by Portugal, and you could see the frustration, which is very rare from Jorge Braz, four-time consecutive Coach of the Year, current European and world reigning coach. He was furious in the second half for Portugal, really not, stopping the Ukraine train that was coming their way. What do you think Portugal needs to do in their next match in order to kind of, take it to Finland a little better than what they did to the Ukraine today?
Well, I think Portugal, if you look at individuals, I don't think they're necessarily the best team. I know Zicky, Pani, the great players, but maybe the rest of the squad as a whole is not the most talented, although obviously there's a lot of talent there. But what they do is they move the ball really quick, and it's a lot high intensity game. And I think, today they didn't really penetrate through Ukraine, but as we said, Ukraine's a very good team. I think they've just got to continue believing in themselves, and I think that's the thing with Portugal that they've changed in the last few years is their mentality. I think it's not necessarily, if we look at the two tournaments, they won. They didn't have Ricardinho in the final. He got injured quite early on in the last Euros, and obviously he was coming back from injury in the World Cup at the last tournament when they won, so he wasn't at his highest performance. But I think their mentality's changed now, and I think probably Ricardinho's driven that in the sense that he's shown what a Portuguese player can do and how they can succeed and be at the very top level. So I think there's not much they need to change necessarily. They just need to keep playing, keep believing. You're going to have tough games. It's very competitive out there. And Portugal might be European and world champions, but they're very even with the other top teams. So yeah, I think they've got to keep believing in Jorge Braz's style and philosophy of play, which has brought them success in the last few years.
Well, we talked about Portugal obviously finishing top of Group A, Ukraine getting the second nod with one win and two losses. It was a three-way tie with the Ukraine, the Netherlands, and Serbia each winning a game and losing two. Heartbreak in that other game with the Netherlands and Serbia. The Netherlands up. Finally, fans are actually able to go into the stadiums. 1,250, I believe, is the capacity right now. And it must have been a great experience for them to, get their first taste of the futsal soup, if you will. What was your thoughts on the Netherlands throughout this tournament, and what was great, and where do they need to go in order to build that program?
Yeah, it's a real shame you mentioned about the crowd, and I think that's the big shame at the moment that they got a few fans in today, but in the previous games they didn't. And I think futsal will move on, and the next Euros will be great attendances like we've had in the last few years. But when are the Dutch going to host the game again? And I think when you're talking about where the Dutch team going to go, this could have been massive for their development if the crowd had been in the games, and maybe they would have made them qualifying, because we've seen how well Serbia have done recently when they had hosted, Slovenia, Croatia. When teams have hosted the tournament, they've always done really well. And even today, they had that penalty to make it 3-2. I think it was it Buzambu who missed the penalty, the 6 meter. And that could have meant going to the next round. But, again, it's like Finland, these guys, mainly semi-pro players. It's not easy to compete at this level. And I think you've just got to keep developing the futsal, developing the league so that you get a higher standard in the league, because as much as you can do as a see them as a national team training camps. At the end, I think a national team is more the standard of their league, with a few exceptions. The best teams have the best leagues because you need your players competing week in, week out. So yeah, I think it's just a case of we've got a lot of talent in Holland. So it's just a case of building the league and giving players more opportunities in futsal.
Yeah, and I mean, I've really loved to see the marketing of this program, and I think the KNVB, like the Finnish Association, another nation that I'm a really big fan of, and it has nothing to do with Europe, even though they're close in proximity, is the Moroccan FA. I love what they have done with that program, and I am one of the biggest Morocco fans out there now as a result of that. But the KNVB's commitment to futsal and the growth was quite evident with the marketing. What was your take on the pre-tournament marketing, the videos, the highlights and everything that they've been doing? You've been a fan?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's been brilliant. It's great to see that stuff because, we've not always had that in futsal, and it really puts it as that elite game. So yeah, I'm really happy, but it can't just be, let's market it now when we have the tournament. Let's continue to market with their league, and what's happening continually. It can't be, a one-off event. We've seen, every time a big event gets proposed, it's always about legacy. And we see that a lot of time there is no legacy from these events. So we need to have that marketing continue to really grow the game in Holland, in my opinion. And it was very interesting to listen to your podcast the other day with Vic Hermans about the futsal in Holland.
Yeah, and one thing to add on to the legacy is before the tournament, one of the chief media and PR people, Sue's, a wonderful, wonderful human being, super friendly, redefines what it's like to have the media relationship with operations of tournaments. It's supposed to be friendly, and she's been beyond superb out there. So I want to tip my hat to her. She pointed out UEFA and the KNVB's commitment to legacy. They have these little packs that come together with these cones, a futsal ball, training books, water bottles, all sorts of little cool things. And, these schools are going to get these packs, these futsal starter packs out there. So a big congratulations to the KNVB and UEFA. A lot of people like to knock the highest organizations out there. But these are two organizations, I think, that are really going to do well with futsal. UEFA's proving it. No one's perfect, but, when you have women's competitions, under 19 competitions, and you help promote legacy programs in your host nations, I'm very proud to see UEFA doing a great job out there. And, hopefully sooner than later, we can get back into seeing another event over in Holland, maybe a Final Four Champions League in the future to get full arena capacity at that beautiful Ziggo Arena in Amsterdam. But I'm very happy with it. Doug, you're happy with it. Now, got to ask, moving forward out there, who do you like for tomorrow's games? We have 4 on tap for Group C and Group D. Break it down for us. Which games are you looking forward to the most, and what can we expect?
Yeah, I think the first 2 games, obviously, you've got Slovakia against Croatia and Russia, who have already qualified, Poland. I expect Croatia to beat Slovakia. I thought Croatia were really poor in their game against Russia when they lost 4-0. And I'm someone, like I said earlier, I've played in Croatia a couple of times, and I think they've got so much talent in that squad. When you look at individual talent, it's up there with the very top teams. But we don't see Croatia performing at that level. And I think the problem with Croatia is sometimes they've got so much talent that each individual player tries to find a solution for the team. So every player is like a playmaker. They're holding the ball, try to find the solution. If they don't, they pass to the other one. So many times the player passes, runs, and checks back. And when they get under pressure, it just slowly builds, and eventually they lose the ball. And I'd like to see is Croatia use more players and more mobile players to get in behind teams and open up the spaces for these talented players. And I think Croatia need to believe that they're one of the very top teams, because I think v Russia, they kind of just accepted defeat. So yeah, I still expect them to beat Slovakia tomorrow. You never know. Slovakia could win that game. But I'm expecting to see Croatia in the quarterfinals. In Russia v Poland, I think Russia have got the best squad in this tournament, and I think they're favourites. You don't want to say that because they've lost so many finals, except for the last 2 that they weren't in World Cups and Euros, but before that they've lost so many finals. that you think, can they actually ever go that one step further? But I think this is the best chance ever Russia have had.
Yeah, I had Russia as my favorites for this tournament after what I saw at the World Cup, and listening to a lot of the Russian analysts, who really, they don't overfavor the team at all. And then you get to see some of the games in the Russian league. This team looks absolutely firing on all cylinders. I feel very bad for the Polish tomorrow because I think Russia is going to take it to them. Even with their performance so far, I don't think Russia's going to rest. They're a relentless team that wants to show that they're the best every single game. And after Portugal's kind of average performance, and I use the term average for the Portuguese performance. I mean, it's European champions and world champions. It's going to be something. Russia, I think, wants to make a statement of intent to everybody for the next round, saying we're here and we are favored for a reason. What are you liking in particular from Russia? Are there any players that have stood out to you that really are just making you go, wow, this is something special here?
Well, I think what they've got great in their squad is the great versatility. They've got kind of every type of player. I think maybe you could argue they haven't got a really strong pivot, which is strange for them because in the past they've had Edelima, Liskov, and neither of them. I know Edelima got injured this year, so he's not there. But I think they've got 1v1 players. They've got strong. Every player really in Russia team is strong individually defending. They've got Toshkin who can finish off set plays, and I think they're all as well. They're at a very good age. Their players, they're all in kind of their peak, and even their younger players, which you don't think he's young. Chishkala, he obviously he's only 26 still. He's got so much experience. So I think, like we're saying, this is the time for Russia, and I think they've got a bit like we saw Portugal change that mentality. They've got to have that mentality that we're going to win whatever happens. And I think you're right. I think tomorrow we'll see a really strong performance for them to try and put a bit of fear in their rivals going into the knockout stages.
No question about that. And what about Group D? We have seen, a few surprises out here. Some people not necessarily so surprised. But what's your take on Group D, and what can we expect come Saturday evening in Amsterdam in Groningen?
Yeah, well, obviously you've got the Georgia-Spain game, which you'd expect Spain maybe to already have qualified now, but obviously they've drawn. They won against Bosnia, but draw against Azerbaijan. And I think it's interesting with Spain because I think in 2006, that was one of the most dominant performances I saw when they won. And I think it was 6-2, was it, in the final against Russia? But it all relied on set plays and pressing, stealing the ball high in a quick counter-attack. And I think they've lost the quality now. And that was a sign, I think, of that they've lost the quality in attack. Even in this tournament, they haven't scored from a positional attack. So when, the defense is set and trying to beat a set defense, they've not scored one goal like that yet, although they did create a lot of chances against Bosnia. And that, I think that trouble also gives them trouble with their pressing, because their pressing wasn't very good against Azerbaijan. But if you're not having a lot of possession, you're out of possession a lot of the time. It's hard to keep that intense pressing. And you look back and you look at like the 2012 squad, and you had players like Jordi Torres, Alvaro, Kike, Miguelin, and Sergio Lozano in his prime, and it's like real quality players, and everyone can add something in attack as well as defense. And I think now they've got players. Boy is obviously a very good player, as you have to be to play for Spain, but I'm not sure he has quite the attacking threat that those type of players have. So it's really interesting about this development of Spanish players, and is that something because we've seen the Spanish league maybe go down a little bit after we had the financial crisis 10 years ago. We had less Brazilians coming into the league. Has that made it easier and less competitive for the Spanish players coming through? So I think it's really interesting to see how Spain do. I think they'll come out and actually beat Georgia, because I think they'll be so up for this game after a poor performance against Azerbaijan. So that will obviously mean them qualifying. In the other game, Azerbaijan, Bosnia, I think I was impressed with Bosnia. What I've seen from them, again, physically strong, technically good individual players. Azerbaijan, obviously, a lot of Brazilian players, so I can't really call that one. I'm not sure who will win that game. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. And obviously, the risk of Spain losing and going out would be something of a shock and a news story for the tournament.
Most certainly. If Spain are not advancing to the knockout stage, I think it would definitely raise alarms over at the RFEF and throughout the Spanish league. I think it would reverberate around the world, but I do think I'm inclined to agree with you that they are up to the task to face a very strong Georgian side, and I think it's going to be good for Georgian futsal to move forward out there. Obviously, a lot of people have complaints that they do have quite a few Brazilians on the team. What is your take on the expansion of Brazilian players across foreign national teams, all throughout Europe and around the world? What's your take on it?
Yeah, so as you said, I think there's 28 is the Brazilians playing in this tournament, Brazilian-born players. So I'm not a fan of it, to be honest. You look at, that's where I think we have to praise Portugal, because even Spain, they had Fernandao, they had Alimao, Marcelo before that, Paulo Roberto. So even Spain have gone down that route as well. And Portugal have never done that. And maybe it's took them a bit longer to reach the top of world futsal, but they've done it. And then you look at Finland, another team who's on a lower level, and they've developed the Finnish players. They could have, gone out and took 4 or 5 Brazilians, and they would have been in Euro Championship 10 years ago. But for me, I wouldn't, if I was in that federation, that success wouldn't mean as much to me as it would if it was players that I'd developed. So I'm not a fan of it. I think, if they've been in the country a long time, maybe like Zicky Te, maybe it's acceptable then with Kazakhstan. But yeah, I'm not a fan, especially when you look at Georgia, and these guys haven't even played in the Georgian league. They're like signing them before the tournament, like it's a transfer market. This, for me, I'm not a fan of it. I don't know. If you're in favour, obviously we get to see some great players in the tournament because of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about inspiring and growing the game, and people generally are magnetized to winners. And ultimately, when you have a winning team, people want to be a part of it. They'll use the excuse, oh, we had foreigners if we lose, but if we win, hey, we won as a country. I want to see the development of domestic players and having them form not just the nucleus of the team, but ultimately the overwhelming majority. We do live in a globalized society, so it's only natural for players to go and live in other countries and make a living. You alluded to Fernando Ferretti, one of the greatest coaches of all time. He was online and made his thoughts very well known. And when that man speaks, everybody should be listening. And he had no qualms also about people going to earn a living and feeding their families back home and making a better life. But there also has to be something said about investing, as you said, in clubs, in the youth, and building those future generations so that you have a long-term sustainable program built from within, not kind of, a quick Band-Aid fix to, advance the agenda of the national team.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like you said, the players, you 100% understand it. Who wouldn't want to play in these great tournaments? And obviously they're getting money for that. And, like you said, they have to feed their families and stuff. But yeah, it's a difficult one, because we look at Kazakhstan, and would we see all these great Kazakhstani players without the Brazilians? Like, they probably wouldn't be here maybe without that. But yeah, it's difficult. I think there's got to be a line somewhere, and I think most people would probably say Georgia have crossed that line a little bit with how they've signed players just before the tournament.
Excellent. And I mean, could you imagine if Spain happens to move on and they play Russia in the quarterfinal? Would that not be the juiciest encounter moving forward in the second round?
Yeah, well, I think that was, except for the last few years, that was always the game, wasn't it? It was always who's going to win when Russia and Spain face each other, and they're going to be the champions. And I wonder, it'd be interesting to know what the Russians' perspective on that is, and would they actually like to face Spain? And, because they're in form, Spain maybe not in form. It would send a massive message to everyone else as well. Probably they wouldn't. They probably want the easier one, but I don't think if they do get Spain, they'll be worried. I think, they'll be excited for the game, I think.
Yeah, I think we're in store for 4 classic matches tomorrow that have a lot on the line for a lot of nations. And I mean, moving forward away from the Euro, actually, you know what? I want to keep one thing on the Euro, is who has been the most influential player in the tournament in your eyes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I really like Douglas Jr. I think, he's on the pitch quite a lot of the time as well. And it's incredible how, how he contributes in defense, in attack. He's just a complete warrior, and he adds so much. Probably if I'm looking at who contributes to the team the most, I would probably say Douglas Jr. For me, he's probably the best defender in the world right now.
He's just the absolute Iron Man. He just never tires out there. You'd figure that Peloton would probably give him a sponsorship by now with his cardiovascular skills out there. But my favorite thing about Douglas is his no-look passes out there. When he gives a quick glance and he just looks the other way and that pass comes in. I mean, we saw a little bit today with that first goal. That just was an absolute classic move out there. His abilities at the World Cup are phenomenal. He's having a great tournament here, and he's only 33 years old. I mean, he has a couple of cycles in him. If he keeps as fit as he's portraying right now, I mean, we could see Douglas Jr. at the top level of futsal for at least another 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah, 100%. Like you say, he's got absolutely everything, and you see his toe poke shots as well, so dangerous. So yeah, I hope. We talked about the Brazilian players, but he's one that I'd love to see in future tournaments.
I love it. Well, that was a great recap of what happened today and what's going on tomorrow at Euro 2022. And I guess moving forward, I mean, you're over in England right now. We know that the English program for the national team has pretty much been disbanded, which is really sad, considering all the great work that every single person at the clubs, the grassroots level in England has done to grow that game. But currently right now, explain to us what's happening at the men's level. I mean, we hear a lot about BT Sport broadcasting, the FA League and whatnot. Can you break down for people who are relatively new to what's happening or maybe not updated as to what's going on in the futsal world in England?
Yeah, so the league's continued. The FA don't support it now anymore. No financial support. It's not organised by the FA. But yeah, so the league's still continued. We're still playing. I'm actually playing on Sunday. And yeah, as you said, BT Sport, which is a big sport channel in England that shows the Champions League and Premier League games. So not every game, but I think about half the games are on that channel. So that's really a positive sign for futsal and the interest and growing the awareness of the game. And that's not just the men's as well, that's the women's. So yeah, I think, of course, it was a big blow to everyone when the FA more or less pulled out of futsal, at least as a sport, and developing it as its own sport. But I think everyone's, took responsibility for helping to grow it. And as you said, there's so much great work going on in the clubs that, this will slow the growth down in England for the short term, but the long term, as in every or most countries, I think futsal's got a really positive outlook.
Now, you mentioned with BT Sport obviously being one of the biggest broadcasters throughout the UK, you mentioned Champions League and all these great events that they have. What's the length of the deal that they're going to be broadcasting for? And typically, how many viewers do they have access to that can actually watch futsal and get a taste of it and, maybe get addicted to the sport the same way that, England has been with, football for years?
Yeah, so this is the first year of a 3-year deal. How big the audience? I'm not sure. There is one sport channel, Sky Sports, which is bigger than BT Sports, but BT Sports is a very popular sports channel. But imagine the Premier League games, they're getting up to 500,000 viewers. So there's potentially a massive audience out there that could be watching futsal. And as I said, they're on the games on the weekend. So, it's a good time when people are flicking the channels, even if they don't know the futsal's on, that they catch it and hopefully enjoy it and want to find out more. And whether that's as a fan or a player, get involved in the game, because it's such a great game, as we know, but also it's growing so fast, and it's great to get more people on board.
Well, you mentioned that the FA has kind of pulled the funding from this league. Who's funding it and who's operating the league?
It's a good question. I'm not sure who actually runs it. I think there's some of the funding still from the original funding from when the FA supported it. But yeah, I'm not privy to that information, so I don't really know who's running the league or how they're funding it.
Hey, well, if anyone in England knows the answer out there, to put it in the comments or reach out directly to me or Doug himself out there. We'd love to know. We want to see England grow futsal. We want to see it become one of the preeminent countries in marketing the sport. Hopefully, they get to host a Euro one day and really give a taste of high performance futsal and what it could mean across the country. Now, in your opinion, I mean, again, over 100 caps for the national team. You're a patriot of futsal in that country. What do you think, as a man whose voice should be counting at some of the highest levels out there? what needs to change in England in order for it to thrive and get to where it needs to be?
I think, futsal is always going to continue growing because people experience this sport in whatever role or whatever way, and they love it, and it's going to grow like that. But I think what maybe we made a mistake in the past was always trying to promote it as a football development tool, and we're always trying to promote it in relation to football. And I think that isn't proven. I think that's proven now not to work. And I think we've got to be proud of our sport and confident of our sport, and advertise it as this is a separate thing, because a lot of people love football, and if always you're telling them it's better than football, then that can be a bit irritating for them, or they can come with trying to criticize it or not looking at the best way. And I think we're just confident and say, look, this is a great sport, it's competitive, it's great to participate, it's great to watch. I think that would really, really help in the long term. It might not give that short-term boost like you can get from trying to attach to football, but I think in the long term it will be a lot more sustainable. But I think we just got to keep, people in the clubs have just got to keep building the game. Everyone trying to work together and collaborate, and that's how it will grow. We've got to grow it at the youth level. We've got to grow it in terms of spectators at the league, at the top tier level, and it's everyone making their small little contribution that's going to take this game, to a place where it deserves to be in England. And let's hope like the federation eventually come back on board and help support it. I'm sure they will one day, and I'm sure they'll realise the error of their ways. But for now, we've got to, of course, always try and pressure them to come back and get involved. But we've got to take it as they're not going to be with us, and we've got to do it ourselves.
Well, I think, I couldn't have said it any better. And more importantly, I mean, you're there. You've been there in the mornings. You've been there taking down the nets. You know what it's like, at the very grassroots. But you've also know what it's like at the top level, at the national team, and also playing abroad out there. Not too many England internationals have gone abroad and played professional in the history of the program, but you're one of them. And your voice should definitely be heard by the FA and across everybody in that country. Now, one opinion I wanted over from England is that a massive amount of talent of, female futsal and female footballers as well out there. What do you think would happen if England were to implement and create a women's national futsal team?
Yeah, well, obviously, we've got the Women's Euro. We had the first Women's Euro a couple of years ago, and we've just had the draw today for the semi-finals that happen in March. It's Spain, Ukraine, and...
I'll be there in Portugal, my friend, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Portugal, Russia, the other one. So, it's, in that first tournament, I think there was 23 teams that entered, and I think a few of them, quite a lot of them, in fact, used football players because of the lack of development of futsal. And, I think England, we've got so much talent now in the women's game, and obviously you've only really got one professional division. So there's a lot of talent out there that's not professional, could play futsal as well as their football, or would love the opportunity maybe to dedicate themselves to futsal because they can play in a European championship. So I think, we wouldn't probably be able to compete with those teams that have got the women's futsal development, like Spain, Portugal, Russia. But that next level, I think we would be a very strong team, and it'd be great. I mean, we had a men's team, since I think 2003, 2004. And, obviously when it got cancelled 2020, we still didn't have a women's team, even though they said that they were going to bring a women's team in. So I think when it comes back, and I'm sure it will come back, it can't just come back with a men's team. It's got to come back men's and women's at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, I always thought about this. I mean, Canada especially, where we're from, we just won the gold medal in Olympic football with our women's team, and it's pretty much the pride of the country. I mean, our men's football team is a top of the table in CONCACAF. But, futsal has been very slow over here. It hasn't been invested in the way it needs to be. The fact is, at least we have a team, and we're, I don't want to say happy with that. We're always trying to push the envelope, and I know England needs their team back because the country has so much potential. But I firmly believe, the countries like England and Canada, the United States, you have Australia, you have these women's futsal teams coming out there. I'm convinced within the first year, you're a top 30 team in the world, just based off the sheer volume of talent. But as the evolution of, football to futsal comes into play, and more importantly, the creation of futsal programs at the youth level all the way through women's, there is no reason whatsoever that nations like Australia, England, Canada, and the United States can't translate that success that they've had in the women's football program and have a long-term sustainable model of success for futsal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's a great game for everyone, futsal is. I know when UEFA did some research on women's football, and they said that a key thing for women players or female players is about the social element of it. And I think futsal is such a social sport. Everyone's involved in the game. You have the unlimited subs. Everyone feels part of it. So I think this game could explode so fast on the women's side as well as the men's side.
Yeah, I think the women's game needs to be invested in heavily out there. And ultimately, when you have that, the push for the Olympics, I mean, the voice has never been louder. And when medals are on the line, that's when funding comes in from governments out there. So that's what we need to really see out there. Prediction for the women's futsal Euro at the end of March. Who do you have between Spain, Ukraine, Russia, Portugal?
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of the teams, but I think it will be a Spain-Portugal final again. Spain are so dominant in the club. Obviously, Barella just won the European, or it's not an official European tournament, but the one that they created. And so I still see Spain winning it. I would love to be there. I know you said you're going to be there. Hopefully, I can be there as well, because it'd be great to see. And let's hope it expands. I think what's been great about this Euros in the men's game is the expansion to 16 teams, and how that's allowed teams like Finland to achieve these historic feats and inspire young people. And I think it'd be great if we saw an expansion of, we always want more in futsal, but UEFA, like you said earlier, are doing a great job introducing more tournaments, but it would be brilliant if they increased the amount of teams that made the finals.
No question about it. And a big part of UEFA's success has been their futsal chief, Laurent Morel, who I got to finally sit down with in Lithuania. Just a great guy and just a wonderful brain and architect behind the sport. The only recommendation I have to UEFA, and particularly to Laurent, is we got the 16 teams. We're happy. But no 4 years. Let's do this tournament every 2. I love the Euro every 2 years. So now we got to wait every 2 years for World Cup and the Euros. But, hey, beggars can't be choosers. More teams, less years. But, hey, what can we do about that? Now, let me ask you, your work in writing in futsal, I think in the English language is the best out there. I'm loving what I'm seeing worldwide now with OTC, the on-the-court guys, the Tapia Owens brothers. Big shout out to them. But, you've had one of the best blogs with the most insight, very detailed and thoughtful, futsal programs out there. What are you doing now that people can go and sit there and say, listen, man, Doug Reed knows his stuff. I want to read more. I want to hear more from him. Where do they find you? And tell us a little bit about the projects you have going on in that regard.
Yeah, the blog's interesting because that started because I had a massive passion for futsal and I wanted to read about it. And there was no one writing about it except for results. There was no analysis. So a friend of mine, actually another England international at the time, he had a blog about football and he asked me to write something about futsal in it. So I wrote that and then I thought, okay, I'll write my own then. There's no one else writing about it. I'll just write about it. And I don't say my opinions are right or wrong, but I just hope that people who read it makes them think a little bit. So I started that in 2013 and I wrote quite a lot until maybe a couple of years ago, and I stopped playing professional and now I'm full-time work. I don't have as much time, but it's great to see there's so much content coming out there, this show including, and you mentioned the Tapia Owens brothers as well, and so many people, I don't want to start naming them because there's too many, but creating content about futsal is really important for the development of the game. So people who've got that passion, when you've got a passion, you've got a hobby, you want to read more, you want to consume more about it, and that feeds and fuels your passion. So I think it's really, really important for the game. In terms of me, like I said, I don't get to write so much these days, but I'm going to Croatia next week for some meetings about different projects I'm involved in. So hopefully you can have some announcements about that in the near future. But I'll always be, futsal's done so much for me. massive part of my life, massive part of who I am, massive part about people I know, and I've been so fortunate to meet all different people around the world because of futsal and visit different countries. So I want to continue giving something back, hoping that young people can get the opportunities that I've had. So yeah, I always want to be involved and make, like I said before, you can only make a small contribution, but make that little contribution and hopefully help grow the game and see more people enjoy it in the future.
Well, you know what? I think it was best said in the post-game interview with, Miko today, where he was sitting there saying it's impossible to do it alone. You need a whole team behind it, and everyone makes their contribution. The whole garden grows out there. So, you're doing definitely a great job, and everybody listening has to check out his website, go through all the archives. You are going to sit there for hours and be entertained, educated, and informed. DougReedFutsal.com. Where can people find you on social media, pal?
Yeah, so at Doug Reed Futsal, I'm mainly on Twitter. I do have Facebook and Instagram, but I don't use them too much. I quite like Twitter, and you get the interaction, and it's really great for following the stories and stuff like that. So yeah, you can follow me on there if you want to hear. Generally, I don't speak about my own experiences. It's more I share great content to see or give opinions on different things I see. So yeah, if you think that would be interesting, yeah, follow me on Twitter.
Excellent out there. So Doug Reed, the man in England, 100 caps. It's unbelievable. This young guy over here has got another few years to get another 100 caps. But English FA, get that program back. Respect your seniors, respect your elder players who built this game for you. You heard it here. Inside Futsal, episode number 7. Talk about chemistry. That was ebb and flow. Chris Fernandez with Doug Reed. We'll see you tomorrow with Maria Pinto. Very, very big fan of futsal and obviously a worker over a little biased about Sporting Lisboa. So we're going to maybe have a little counter with my Benfica nature, but we're going to have some more fun as this tournament continues. Doug, you got to come back to the show, man. You're absolutely on fire. I absolutely loved it, my friend. So the invitation's open to you, and best of luck in your match on Sunday.
Thank you very much. If you have me back, I'd love to be here. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks.